Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we sat down with master builder and entrepreneur BJ Kerr discussing being one of the founders of the Patchwork label and studio, becoming a serial entrepreneur, and how he fell into his current home design and build firm, Regents Custom Builders. Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and I'm sitting down with one of the founders of the studio, Patchwork Recording Studios, as well as an entrepreneur, great businessman, BJ Kerr. How are you?
I'm good. How you, Sammy?
I'm well. Thank you for coming. We finally got you sitting down here. You got the Patchwork chain on. You real official.
Old school trophy.
Nice. Now, I mean, you're one of the missing links to the story. Like this studio, I've been able to sit down and talk to a lot of amazing people, but your perspective is someone that I really wanted to get the inside scoop on. Like, how did this all start for me? But we'll start with your journey. So you're from Chicago originally?
Correct.
Yes. Chicago, tell me about like growing up in Chicago. Where did you have like an affinity for music coming up? I hear that you had some breakdancing experience, so I would like to hear about that as well.
I wouldn't say I had an affinity for music in terms of me wanting to do anything with music per se, but I listened to music in my household. My father was a singer, local, singing in a local group as a kid, not professionally or nothing like that. Mm-hmm. And my sisters sang. My house, a lot of people sang. My sister, my mother played the piano. My father was in a group. And it's funny when I think back, like it's pictures of his group. I got a picture in my house. And, I think of them as like the rappers of our generation. They would stand on the corner and sing the doo-wops and all of that, 4 heartbeats type shit.
I loved it.
They was always singing around the house. I couldn't sing. Mm-hmm. So I didn't ever grow up thinking I want to be in music per se, but I grew up around people who did music, not just in my household, but, just in the neighborhood. They used to play the bongos and all that stuff at the park, and I used to watch them as a kid, and I was also, as you said, into hip-hop. So, running to the record store when they first came out. I remember first time hearing Rapper's Delight and all that, going to the record store and hearing. So I was into it in that as a fan.
As a consumer, as a fan. You're pretty much like you have several businesses or several streams of income between your design business, Regents Custom Builders. You're like real about the branding. I love it, which is a home design and build firm. But I am curious when I talk to entrepreneurs, like what was your first business? Like when was the first time you were making money for yourself? It could be mowing lawns. It could have been, selling CDs.
All since I was able to, since I can't remember the exact age, but I was always, about $1 per se. Yeah. I had a business. I used to sell candy. My mother used to be, one of them candy lady types. So she would teach us about that and have us manning the store, so to speak, which was just, a little table, snow cones and selling pickles and the candy and all of that stuff. My sisters was more into that. I didn't really like selling candy, but I did it. And I, maybe 3rd grade, I think I had a business, a little thing in school, repairing pens. The ballpoint pens, when the spring, you take them apart. If it don't work and make it, put the springs in them or change the thing. Me and the guy named Charles Jackson, we'd charge like $0.25 or something, 10 cents. But making any real money was probably shoveling snow and cutting grass like every other kid. Yeah. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago in an area called the Hundreds where, it was a lot of black folks. It was one of those neighborhoods where everybody knows everybody, grandmas, my father grew up 2 blocks from my mother, so my grandma's house was 2 blocks over. I grew up in the same house my mother grew up in, which was her mother's house. And I would have to do stuff for people in the neighborhood, like my aunties, the older people, go take out their garbage, go cut their grass, shovel their snow. And, they would give me $1, $2, and I would save them. I would stack them up, the dollars in this little box. So that was maybe, I don't know, 4th grade or something like that.
Nice.
But starting a business maybe 6th, 7th grade, actually going out getting customers and making flyers, and even having other people work for me.
Oh, wow. I guess in terms of establishing the business, though, like now that you have like a legitimate business, getting a business license, like all that, where were you learning these things? Was it just kind of like by doing it, you figured it out, or did you have like any influences, anybody that was an entrepreneur that you could?
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you said that, because there was a guy on my block. It's like a big brother of mine who was. It was a lot of people, but one influential guy. His name was Mike Brown. He lived a few doors down from me, and it was a lot of hustlers in my neighborhood that did all kind of stuff. As you can imagine, in any black neighborhood, it's the South Side of Chicago. So it was. He like kind of took me under his wing. He's actually the one started me with cutting the grass and everything, like showing me how to turn it into a business, and was like, man, go, get you some flyers, and we just go to the. I don't know what it was back then. It wasn't Kinko's, but go, get them made,
Print
pass them out. And he actually would take me. He had a truck. He would take me to other places, like outside of the neighborhood, to cut grass. Like I had a lot of accounts. Everything I did pretty much. He, kind of guided me and showed me. And then as I got older, just he had a lot of businesses himself. Even his brother was a contractor too. So me being into construction now, his older brother named Bernard, he was a contractor, and I would work for him a lot of times in the summers, go on jobs with him, and he taught me carpentry. So there was a lot of cats in the neighborhood that had different businesses, and there was a guy named Chuck who worked on cars. I used to hang out with him. Another cat named Solo, he had a shop that started in the garage, him working on cars in the garage. Then he went and got a real shop, down the street. And I worked there in high school. I would work there in the mornings. I would go to the shop at like 6:30 in the morning and work for a couple hours, and then be at school by 9 o'clock, working on cars. So I've done all of that, like the mechanical, that side of me, like building houses,
Right.
working on cars, anything mechanical. That's why I took up engineering in school. My mechanical engineering was my major.
Where did you go to school?
Stanford.
Nice.
Which is how I met Bob.
Right.
So Solo had a shop, and it's still around today. Actually, he was very well known on the South Side. Like all the cats back in those days, all the hustlers, we did their cars. So I knew, just not in my neighborhood, but pretty much on the South Side, it was SRM, which was Solomon's shop, and then there was another shop called Magic Touch. But these were two of the biggest auto shops on the South Side, where all the dope boys and the hustlers went and got their cars hooked up. So that I was around all of that, growing up as a teenager. And a lot of those cats would just, give me a lot of game, and them recognizing that I was, smart and, what's the word, ambitious.
Yeah.
They would always try to steer me in the right direction versus, doing illegal stuff. They would say, nah, you can't do that. They might have me do some little stuff. Like I remember I used to steal the scales out of the chemistry class. They had the triple beam scales. So I was at my man's house one day. They in there bagging up and stuff. And one of the cats didn't know how to work the scale. When I came on there, showed him, he was like, how you know how to do that? I was like, we got these in school, the chemistry class. He was like, for real? He was like, everybody got? I was like, yeah, the whole class got them. He's like, man, these scales are like $300. I was like, how much you give me for them? He's like, should I give you $150? So I me and my buddy start taking the scales 2, 3 at a time. And they had some in the back room. We might probably stole 30, 40 scales before they
figured it out.
Yeah. So stuff like that, the cats would say, hey, don't, just try to steer me in the right direction, but still showing me how to hustle without really getting myself, in
Caught it.
Yeah, exactly. So shout out to Mike Brown and Solomon.
Absolutely. That's dope. Reflecting on, like your odd jobs, your entrepreneurship early on, how were you able to apply that even as you went into college and then beyond college? Like, obviously you went on to open up or help open up the studio, but also the record label and things, and we'll get into that story as well. But I'm curious as to, like, just looking back on it, your craftsmanship, like all of these things, how they align. But at the time, did you think that what were you thinking at the time, just picking up these jobs? Like, I just want to get
teenager?
money. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just around. I was around. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it was just there. Mm-hmm. That was the neighborhood that I lived in. True. I mean, everybody had some sort of hustle. Like, it was a pimp, a whorehouse across the street from me. So the pimp, his name was Dollar. Since they took a liking to me, I mean, and plus I'm the neighbor, he would just tell me stuff. Even though it would be that pimp talk, I would be catching on to, I would take the lesson, just like a cliche, like, you know what I mean? Like somebody that say a stitch in time saves nine. I really, apply that. Like with homes, right? I tell customers all the time, like, you need to do your maintenance on the house. Come and make sure you check your windows and caulk around it. So one of the first houses that I had, I didn't ever paint it. I lived in that house for like 7-8 years, and I didn't ever paint it until it got real bad. And I went there, and all my seals was rotted out. And then I was just thinking of, like, I should know better because, working on cars, we see people come in there, they didn't change the oil, they didn't do the proper maintenance. You will see how much something that would have cost you $100 end up costing you $5,000 down, or $2,000, whatever. Right. So the different little stuff like the pimp talk and all of that stuff, I was, soaking it in to apply it. So not that I, consciously did it, but now a lot of things that I do when somebody will say something, will say, well, what made you do that? When I think back, like, well, damn, always, just like, the customer service thing that we was talking about yesterday. Just making sure the consistency, the customers expect this, that was something that, the homies would tell me that, like, hey, make sure your product is always the same. Mm-hmm. Make sure that your inventory, because like it was another cat, Reg, that I used to learn a lot from because I would be around him. And he was one of them, come pick me up, take me to the store, take me downtown and show me stuff. And he would say, BJ, I don't really bring nobody else. He would take me to his other cribs outside of the hood and say, look, when I come downtown, all of that gangbanging stuff, that's for when I'm in the hood because that's my business. But when I come here, we do it different. So we don't do this. We talk like this when we get around these, these white folks. When you come in the building, just showing me how to move in different worlds, which I had no idea. Yeah. Like I went to this house and I'm like, he got pictures on the wall, standing in front of Eiffel Tower. I'm thinking it's one of the things you stand in front of and make it look like it. I said, where you took that at? He was like, the Eiffel Tower. And I'm like, this dude, gang banging ass dude from the hood, standing here with a long fur coat and he an African front. I was like, damn. He's like, yeah, he was like, I'm exposing you to this. He was like, but when I leave the hood, I'm a different person. You know what I mean? I'm not hat broke off, throwing gang signs because I got to go deal with these people because he was a millionaire. So he dealing with people on real estate and art and travel. So he was just saying, look, don't get caught up in that thinking, that's
the only way.
Yeah, I know that's, where you from, but you trying to get out of that. Mm-hmm. He was like, the only reason I'm still being in the hood because that's where I make my money. Mm-hmm. He was like, but this is my life outside. So that's one of the reasons I went away to school. I had no intentions on going to California for school. I didn't want to leave, so that's why it always tripped me out when I got older when you hear the rappers talk about, I'm never leaving the projects and I'm like, well, you got to get out and see. Yeah. I didn't even know what Stanford was. So I seen a brochure one day. They had a little at school where they was recruiting. Stanford had a program where they was recruiting from inner city schools. So the teacher introduced me to the recruiter and was like, he's, one of our top students, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you ever thought about coming to the West Coast to Stanford? I thought he was talking about Stanford, Connecticut. I was like, Stanford? And then he showed me the thing, and it was a palm trees and a lake on campus, and people was windsurfing. I was like, that looked different. Cool. Yeah. I was planning on going like U of I. That's where a lot of people go from Chicago. Like, especially if you're an engineer. U of I got a really good engineering program. Northwestern, that's a really good school for engineering too. But when I saw that, and I was thinking about, Reg and showing me like how he would travel and all the stuff that he was doing, I was like, yeah, let me get up out of here. Let me go out west and see what's to that. So that was really, it wasn't even about the school because I didn't know much about it. I knew it was a good school. It was just me and the older cats showing me and telling me like, look, it's a lot more to life than being in the hood. Even now, mind you, this cat had 930 Porsches in the 80s.
Wow.
And, he was coming, he used to bring he used to hang out with a lot of the guys, played basketball, the Bulls. So he was a big guy in our neighborhood. I mean, he was in Scottie Pippen wedding. He was like real cool with Scottie, and because he had money.
Right.
But when he did all that other stuff, like we didn't know nothing about that. We only seen him in the hood, and he'll bring them through sometime. Remember Isaiah, like a lot of athletes would come to our park. It was a known park too for basketball, but he would bring other folks there, and you would come see Ferraris and Porsches and shit out in front of the park. But to really see that he also knew, like I would go to restaurants with him, and the maitre d's, white folks would know him. On the north side of Chicago, which is a whole different world. So that kind of exposure, led me to say, I want to get out of here and, go outside of just staying in Chicago, let alone just staying in the neighborhood on the south side.
Right.
And other things that he was doing that we didn't know about. He had real estate. He owned art. Like, we didn't know that because nobody, he didn't bring nobody to his houses outside of the crib that was in the hood.
Right.
Like Mike Brown, like he owned real estate. He would take me, when I was in high school, let me bring the girls over his house outside of the hood. So I was getting exposed to that and them showing me like, look, when you make your money, you got to invest it in something. And this is as a teenager. And, they would always tell me, for every, dollar you spend, make sure you save $1. So I had bought a car when I was young, like I was like 14 maybe, I think, and I bought a car. And of course, my mama didn't want me to have a car, so I had to hide it from my mama. And I used to keep it at my guy Mixon's house till my sisters told on me one day because I wouldn't give her a ride. But the story about the car is I wanted to do all the stuff to it, right? I wanted to put the rims on it and the sound system and, because I was working at Solo's shop. But they would tell me, okay, if you got to spend $500 for the rims, don't spend that $500 till you got $1,000. Because I would save up and I'd be like, okay, I got to save $1,000. And then I'm by this. They were like, well, don't do that until you got this much. So those type of lessons, they was telling me, he told me too, they would tell me like, fill up, if you fill up a shoebox this size with this much, then that's how much money it is. And then you can go do this. So it was, showing me little rules of thumb that they would use on how, which was real business rules. I mean, I don't know if ratios and shit was,
accurate,
correct, but it was just those type of lessons because they knew, I was a ambitious type of kid that they would, impart upon me. And now when I look back, I remember a lot of stuff, even when I was in school, a lot of the business lessons, marketing classes I would take, that was the same stuff.
Yeah.
Even like in music, the promotions and stuff. I remember like, for instance, Reg. So Reg's cars was always white, right? And he had this big white Benz I used to drive. Big, I don't know what it was back then, 500 or something. His Porsche, and I say, and they was pearl, they flip-flop. I say, Reg, why you always get your cars white like that? He said, because they got to know when I pull up, I'm the man. He was like, they know that's that cocaine white. If I pull up in a neighborhood, he was like black as I am, and he was a big dude. And I jump out like this, they know I got the best product in the city. And he was like, so this is my calling card, BJ. This is, you know what I mean? This is how I market. Mm-hmm. When I pop up shining like this in a big black ugly motherfucker get out this pretty ass car, they know ain't nobody product fucking with mine. So he was, everything like was marketing, but then he would take that shit off. When we would go up north, he'd take off all them glasses and jewelry and all that, and he was like, look, that's for marketing. That's not really who I am, so to speak. That's who he was, of course, but he was like, that's all a part of, the sale. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So you met Bob at Stanford. So I'm curious, you opened a store at 19 while you were still in school. You had a store?
Mm-hmm. So it was after my freshman year, I think, because I was doing graffiti. So I was doing that before I left. Mm-hmm. So when I came back for the summer, we had talked about it before, like opening the store, because it was starting to get popular, like the hip hop clothing, the cross color. So we met the dude. I think his name was Carl Washington. Whoever started cross. We met him at a expo, one of those black expos, and he was just selling T-shirts, but they was printed. And this is back. They T-shirts wasn't even like. They were still buying like Fruit of the Loom and cutting the tag out the back. You look in the bag, you see the cutout tag, but they had dope, hip hop designs, bold colors, like cool stuff. So this was probably maybe my senior year of high school. It might be my freshman year, but we met him at a little thing at an expo and was talking to him about the clothes. And we was already thinking that, right? Because we was doing a lot of clothes, like airbrushing, and we did tattoos because we was, graffiti artists. So so all the, painting the cars, the back of the cars, the hoods and motorcycle tanks, that type of stuff. But we was always thinking like, man, we should, come out with silk screen versus each one being custom. Mm-hmm. So when we saw the dude, we kind of already had that idea, but we didn't have obviously any money to blow it up and get it in the store. He didn't have it in the stores either. He was just going around the country doing them at the expos. Mm-hmm. So we stayed in contact with dude, and when I was in school, they was out of California, Cross Colors was, and I stayed in contact with him, and he was like, yeah, we finna open up a in the Midwest, like not open up, but have one of the guys was gonna move there and like to do distribution when they was finally getting in the stores. So I was like, man, we was thinking about doing a store, open up just a little hood store. So my buddy Slang, man, was just talking about it, and then we looked into it and found out it really wasn't that much. It was like, I think we paid $3,000, maybe. I think our rent was $1,500 a month. So maybe first and last, so maybe we had to come up with $4,500. So and then I knew about carpentry, so I built the inside out, which was nothing but building a little counter and a desk and decorating the walls. Mm-hmm. So, and me always being a thinking entrepreneurial mindset, we did it.
That's tight. Now, you linked up with Bob. I'm curious as to when, at what point or why was it like, okay, we should do this record label. Obviously y'all became friends and worked on that relationship through college, but I'm curious then, still having this entrepreneurial mindset, why was it record label, studio?
That was Bob's.
Bob's idea.
Yeah, that was Bob's idea. Like I said, I didn't really have. I actually was thinking about. I came to Atlanta to get into real estate.
Gotcha.
So again, that was
At that time, you came for.
This is out of college.
For real estate.
Yeah, but in school, I was trying to think of what I wanted to do. Gotcha. Because I did internships when I was in school for engineering, which is what my degree was in, mechanical engineering, and product design, which is subset of mechanical engineering. Mm-hmm. Hence, I think now my home's kind of as product, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I knew I didn't want to work in that as when I was doing them internships, because I was sitting there looking like, this is,
This ain't it.
Yeah, this ain't it. Like, I'm looking at the cats that's 35 years old, and I'm like, nah. So even, and these was cats who had made it to a certain level because they 35. They've been working at the company for 10, 12 years. Mm-hmm. And, it's just, I couldn't see that as my lifestyle. So I was thinking of what I was going to do. And this is maybe, the last couple years, just, reading and I was still interested in fashion from the store. So Slang still ran the store. Like when I was in school, the store was still running.
Right.
And I would even do stuff in California too. As far as like, selling shirts and doing stuff for folks on campus. And then by being, me being into hip hop and knowing people, like a lot of the guys, a lot of the rappers when rap was blowing up, like I was telling Keyshawn yesterday, I knew Money B from one of my guys out there in Oakland. Mm-hmm. So then, I was around Digital Underground and Pac, was still carrying speakers and we did shirts for them.
That's tight.
Like if you look at old Humpty Hump, old videos and stuff, you'll see them having on airbrush shirts and jackets. So I was still doing that out there. Mm-hmm. And the store was still running in Chicago. So I was thinking about, fashion, but I really, you needed some money to get into that. And then I was looking at real estate because, that's just something that I always heard as most people, like that's where
it's at.
Yeah, exactly. So the plan was for me, and this was a plan that I had come up with another one of my buddies who was going to get drafted in football because he was going to get some money. So we was talking about what could we invest in, and we started going to seminars and things. This is when we was in school, real estate seminars and reading. And I put together a business plan and identified Atlanta as the city to go to because Atlanta was blowing up at the time, And I had a cousin that went to Morehouse named Rico, and I used to come visit him all the time. Go to the Freakniks and go to the homecomings. Mm-hmm. So I just seen Atlanta as a popping city. So that's kind of how we came up with Atlanta. So it was a coincidence Bob got drafted by Atlanta because I was already planning to go to Atlanta anyway.
Got you.
And get into the real estate game with my man Gordo. And then I was down here hanging out with Bob, and he was interested in music. He was playing around with it at first. He bought equipment. He had some, equipment trying to produce, at his house. He had him in his basement and, just kind of fucking around with it. And then he had a partner that could rap back in L.A. named Raz. And, he let me hear him. And I think Curtis is the one who talked him into investing in Raz because I don't even think he was thinking about that. He was just, I don't know what Bob was thinking about. He just was, he had millions of dollars. Interest. He was young. He just bought some equipment.
Yeah.
And and again, me being into hip hop, I had a lot of friends that was DJs in Chicago and rappers, so I knew more about hip hop than Bob did. And he knew that. And then he knew I knew people in hip hop. I knew some rappers and people that worked at labels and things like that. And then I knew people that was just in the hip hop scene, the cats from Cross Colors, and then Carl Kanai came out. So I had met these folks. And then, I was just into that scene, so to speak. So he was asking me for help. And he knew my entrepreneur background. So after, I guess he decided, I'm not, privy to what all, him and Kurt was talking about the cat Raz. So at some point, he decided that he was going to invest in it. But the idea was to put out the record independently because we saw what other folks was doing in Atlanta. People that was our age, Jermaine and Dallas, were putting out artists and had deals. And you start hearing about these folks, Tony Draper's, the early people. And then me being in the Bay, I was witness to what Too Short and Sick With It, E40, Be Legit and them had did. And I started really thinking like, okay, it's some real money in this. Whereas before, I was thinking there wasn't much money in it because, the early days of rap, you looking at the videos, I'm like, I got the same cars they got, Right. I'm 18. I was having 5.0s and IROCs and all of that stuff as just hustling as a kid. And I'm like, rappers ain't getting no money. My homies got, Porsches and all of that stuff. And then around this time, 94, 95, you start seeing, because the Chronic came out in 93, and then Biggie came out 94, and you start seeing like, okay, this hip hop thing is,
it's a thing.
Yeah, it's getting big. Like it's real money in it now. So that's how kind of I got on board, because I really have been thinking about this real estate thing for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, well, Bob got money. This dude can really rap, because it wasn't just, luckily it wasn't one of them things, my homeboy rap, but your homeboy really ain't
Not
that
good.
dope. Like, he was really dope because I was into rap, obviously. And, I was like, okay, he got something.
Right.
Just by, coincidence or happenstance that one of his homies actually was like one of the dopest lyricists out there, period.
Right.
So I went to California. Bob just kind of, I started off by helping him with the, setting up the business, the paperwork, and just helping him at first. And he was like, man, he was having fun playing ball. So he was like, man, why don't you just come on and do this with me full time? And I didn't know he meant go to California at first, because I was like, shit, I just came from California.
Right.
You want me to go back to California? So then I was like, okay, California, remember, Death Row was popping. California was hot. LA was popping at the time. Hip hop had kind of went, that was, where a lot of stuff was happening. So I was like, all right. I went out there and, we cut the record. That was the idea. That we went in like maybe 2 months. We cut 4 or 5 joints and put it out. So within 2 months of being out there, we had a single out and just started, pushing it independently.
Right.
And it caught fire. People really liked it. He got a lot of PR, a lot of publicity off of it. We sold a lot of records independently, and then the major labels started calling. Because the idea was to put the record out independently, because we had seen what Master P and E40 and a lot of the cats had did independently. But Raz didn't want to put the record out. Like, how it is when the label started calling, and your homies, he had a lot of homies that was already, signed and they flying around and staying in presidential suites. So he wanted that. He just, we couldn't argue. You can't argue with the artists if they don't want to work, if they don't want to do the shows, if they don't want to cut the records independently. So we ended up signing the deal with Priority. And then that's when the studio thing started to come into fruition. Bob was, we saw Atlanta was, becoming a real hip hop, because I originally, the idea everything was going to be based out of LA because everybody was from LA. Bob was from LA. I wasn't from there, but I just came from Cali. Mm-hmm. Raz was out there, and that's where the music was. Mm-hmm. We didn't really think it was that big of an opportunity for a studio. So the first studio, 995 McMillan, was just a little small house. And the idea was that the next studio, the big world-class facility like this, would be in LA. But, just
Destiny had other plans.
Yeah, just the way it played out was perfectly, because after the first studio was open, Atlanta really became, that hot spot. I mean,
right.
The after all the Tupac, Biggie stuff, people got scared of the gangster music, and Suge went to jail, and the whole West Coast scene kind of died out. And this Pac got killed in '96, right? And then '97 was Biggie, and then you had Outkast and Goody Mob was on fire, and all the producers, Dallas and Jermaine and Rico and Organized Noise, and all of them was producing all the records, and it just made sense. So I ended up moving here permanently in like around '98. So I was coming back and forth in those years from when we started. I think Bob bought the house in '94.
995.
Yeah. But he, he wasn't really doing nothing with it. He was kind of using it as a clubhouse. His homies was there and just trying to put it together. I was working on the business plan for the studio. Me and Curtis was talking over the phone. He was still in Michigan. And I think Curtis came down in '95. You came down in the summer '95, Curtis? So after he graduated, he came down here, and then we was bringing the artists here too. The artists that we had, which was Raz, Voodoo, Mean Green. Mean Green actually moved here. So Green moved here probably 95 as well. I was still in LA. So Green actually moved here before me. But I would come here and stay for weeks at a time and then go back. So I was kind of back and forth. But a lot of that, before Curtis even came, we was working on the business plan and the marketing plan and how,
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So did you imagine that 25 years later you see that this is still going and
Nope.
it's all these plaques on the wall? You had no idea?
Mm-hmm. Nobody did, I don't think. Because I was thinking Atlanta was just going to be the hot spot for the minute, like how LA, at one point the Bay Area was the hot spot. Like everything, they had they wave, and then it was at one point it was the poor righteous teachers. It was everybody was on the 5%er stuff. These different waves in hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the gangster rap with NWA and Ice-T and Snoop and all that. Then it came to Goody Mob, Outkast. It was like more soulful, conscious type rap.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking it was, gonna move.
Right.
Even though there still was gonna be always some of that, but I never imagined that Atlanta would be the mecca where all the music pretty much, every music is influenced by hip hop nowadays.
Right.
And black music, so to speak. So R&B and rap and all the different genres of rap and trap music and, snap and whatever they got, whatever it's called now. What they call it now?
I don't know. I don't believe in genres at this point. It's so much.
But,
it's so many pockets.
But it's a whole new wave in Atlanta now.
Yeah. I don't know what you call that.
That the skinny jeans and
they call it mumble rap, but
I think they passed mumble rap.
We passed mumble rap. Who knows?
But it's I would have never thought back then
this what it would be.
That 25 years later, Atlanta would still be as hot. Because back then, if you would count, let's say, the early 2000s or so, when you had Luda and Tip and then Jeezy and Gucci right behind them and all of that, that was a lot. When you were like, dang, it's like 5, 6 out of the top 10 rappers, more than half of them is out of Atlanta, the biggest selling rappers, because then you only had Jay really that was going platinum and multi-platinum out of New York. And Wu-Tang kind of had faded out by the early 2000s. Nas was, put out a record every few years. Like, you didn't really have no big platinum rappers except for Jay. Then you had Nelly out of St. Louis. But in the early 2000s, out of your multi-platinum rappers, more than half of them was from Atlanta. And it's still the same now.
Yeah.
If you looked at, the top, the biggest, and not just the rappers, the songwriters, the producers, the executives, even if they leave here, and go take a job in LA or New York, a lot of them came from here, or they made their bones here.
Here, right? The foundation was here.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask in terms of, because obviously throughout our conversation, we talked about your number of hustles, number of businesses that you've been able to have over the years. We didn't really get into your current business, which is Regents, but we can talk about it briefly. But I just want to know, like, how do you maximize the hustle? What does that look like? Like, how have you been able to take what you learned from the neighborhood to the studio to, like, what you currently do to, like, really maximize this mentality that you have? Because everybody, it's not like innate for it. Seems like
what do you mean by maximize it?
Like really utilize what it is that you're good at. You know what I mean? Like from the different skills that you have to putting it all, like funneling it all into one thing.
I don't know. I don't ever feel like I have maximized it. I feel like a lot of my potential was wasted. But for me, whatever I do, I just try to do the best at whatever it is. I didn't plan on. I kind of fell into what I do now, which is a different story. I'll briefly tell you how I got into it. So I was investing in real estate. So even when I was in music, because remember I had real estate in the back of my mind. You know, I read all the books. Most millionaires, 80% of them, their wealth is from real estate. So I always wanted to be in real estate. So when I was still in music, when I came here, I started buying properties, you know, rental properties. And when I got to a certain point that I had, I got tired of being a landlord, right? I had all these properties. Most of them was affordable homes, Section 8, and I got tired of the phone calls and people move out and I had to go fix them up. And I realized that, you know, instead of having 30 homes spread out across the city, I should just get an apartment building, you know, have 30 doors right there, and I can have a supervisor, you know, a super that lives in the building, or a property manager. So that's kind of how I got into the construction side of it, because as I was selling off the homes and I would have to go repair them, it was hard for me to find people to do good work. And me having some experience in construction and design, I started doing it myself. So that's kind of how I got into it. But this is when I was still in the music business. And then I was in the club business too. So
as in you were doing what for the, like you had
I was doing clubs,
Gotcha.
You know, promoting. Running clubs, you know, and I got into that to promote the records. Because I used to look at the people who had the clubs, and I used to have to go and ask them and pay them to play the records, you know, pay the DJs. And I was like, well, if I had the club,
then I have to,
then they got to play what I tell them to play. Or I got the, you know, so.
Genius.
Yeah, so and then there was a cat where Alex, you know, everybody know Alex owned all the clubs. I used to talk to Alex. I said, Alex, why don't you get into the music business? Because you controlling all the DJs. And you controlled the radio.
Yeah.
When we started doing commercials, they was like, well, Alex bought all the time. You might have to go see Alex. I'm not going to see Alex by no time. What you mean? But he had a lot of power. Mm-hmm. I was like, man, so if you own the radio station, and he really like ran the radio station, so to speak, because he was spending the most money. He spent the most money at the McDonald's on the radio at that time. I don't know how much radio he does now, but, you know, and luckily, you know, my rep was cool. He gave me the same prices as Alex. So we was piggybacking off of him because he knew we was cool with Alex. And he was like, well, we're not supposed to, I'm going to put you in under this. And he used to put us in under his thing but I just saw, you know, how he could control, you know, the records get started in the clubs and then the DJs. So that's how I ended up getting into the clubs, because I knew some of the club promoters and stuff, because we used to have to go to them to get the records played. So I started into the club promotions as a way just to get the record played. But so for the house thing, when I would sell the houses off, I would have to go fix them up. So I started fixing them up, and then a neighbor convinced me one day to work on her house, to renovate her house. She was a landlord too. And she was like, BJ, you know, she kept asking me every time she would see me, your house, I had like 2-3 houses on that block. And after I did the first one, I kept saying, no, I don't do it for other people. And I was doing the second one, which was right next door to her house. And she was like, well, you're going to be here. Your guy's going to be here. You might as well come and get some money and, you know, and renovate my house. Because she was having the same problem. She couldn't find good people to do it. So she talked me into it. And then she was going through a bank for her renovation. So I had to get a business, because I never had a business like a construction. So I had to go get a name and so, you know, for her to give it to the bank, for me to fill out the paperwork.
So you were kind of forced to start.
Yeah, so that's how I started. It was a business, because before it wasn't a business. I was just a landlord. I was just owning properties, and I was just doing a lot of the work myself. And literally some of it I was doing myself. Like I would go in there and paint. Like now I don't do anything myself unless I want to, just for fun. But I know how to do it.
Now I put in.
Well, sometimes you got to show the guys that you know, because they'll try to, you know, cheat you and cut some corners. I'm like, nah, move. Let me show you. This how you do it. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, okay. He really know how to do the shit. So
let me not half-ass it.
So to your question, I never planned on building homes or being I just want to own real estate as an investment, but then it turned into a business, and I was good at it, and I made myself be good at it. You know, just like I ain't no dancer, right? But when I was a break dancer, I said I'm gonna be the best. So I hung around the best. So like our crew was the best. Same with graffiti. I'm not necessarily no no dude, no, I wasn't one of them kids drawing the Spider-Mans and stuff in school. I just seen people putting their names on the wall. I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's cool. Yeah. Then when I would see who they are, so I just would practice and I would do the research and I would read. Same thing like I was saying how me and Curtis, we didn't know nothing about no studio business. We would just read. We would go visit the studios and pick their brains, and we would, and then we would look at what the best studios are doing. So for me, that's kind of whatever I get into, I'm gonna try to surround myself with the best people. Like Slang, to this day, he's one of the best graffiti artists in the history of Chicago. He still does it. Like he's a big, time artist in Chicago.
That's
like,
tight.
So I would just try to learn whatever it is from the people who
do it best.
Yeah, who do it best. And
that's how you get a world-class facility like this. That's how you get a really amazing
you just got to get a good team, bringing the best engineers, bringing the best, studio builder, whoever designed this. Russ Berger, right? Yeah, so that's
That's T. Well, we got we're running out of time, but I feel like I got through only a quarter of your story, so we'll definitely have to do a part 2, 3, and 4. But I do want you to shout out, your business and let people know how they can get in touch with you if they want to get some work done.
It's Regions Customs Builder. On Instagram, I'm the Modern Craftsman.
Yes.
All right, next time you got to make me cry.
I mean, I was trying to keep it, nice on this good Sunday morning. But, next time I will get into some of those emotional things that we haven't addressed. Thank you so much, BJ. I appreciate you. As always, you guys can find this podcast at IDM Podcast on all social media, as well as myself at Sammy Approved. Thank you.
All right, peace.
Sonically superior.